Good evening, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to Crimson Tide. This is Jim, and that is my good buddy Kyle. And this is a totally new thing for us. We have a guest, and I just so happen to know this guest quite well. Her name is Kris Norman, and she just so happens to be my beloved wife. And so we are going to be doing a lot of interesting things today, um, or this evening, or this morning. Anyway, we're going to be doing some interesting stuff in regards to paraprofessionals, people that actually work with children that have got emotional disorders or, disabilities, as well as physical disabilities. And so, oh, Kyle's got something to say. I can see it.
Yes. Before we get started, I would like to say Merry Christmas to everyone. This is a pre-Christmas show. So Merry Christmas, and I hope you get plenty of goodies stuffed in your stockings. And and that probably sounded like an innuendo. I promise it was not meant as one.
You are,
And
yeah, you stocking
hope you get
stuff,
what you want for Christmas.
whatever. Yeah, and now my dog is also down here trying to figure out what I am doing. But anyway,
I want a social life for Christmas, but I don't think Santa's going to bring me one.
probably not. You're gonna have to go out and get it. You know how that works.
Yeah, I might go to Canada, eh?
Oh, you better believe it, don't you know? Got some good folk up there. Anyway, I am going to behave myself, and I'm also going to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. Um, it's been an interesting year. We've got wind chills right now that are hovering right around 30, 35 degrees below zero. And so, yeah, it's hard to believe, but our the retreat, which is where I broadcast from, is actually sitting at a balmy 60 degrees right now. Oh, my wife is checking to make sure I'm right.
63.
63. It's a heat wave.
I would like to start things off by asking our guest a question.
Hey.
Okay, so my question is this. How how do you find that teaching kids with disabilities and special needs differs from your typical your typical style of teaching for kids who are not special needs?
That's a big question. Let's see. When I first went into education, I started out in preschool, and then I moved into teaching middle school, high school, middle school, elementary mostly. And the classes are very easy, if you want to put it that way, because most of the kids do what you need them to do. You don't have to bring things down a level. Usually can keep at a pretty good pace, and there's usually a pretty good level of understanding. Um, I moved from being a teacher to working as a para, and my first experience was working in DCD, so the developmental cognitive delayed kids that also have medical issues and have uh, physical, like cerebral palsy. We have a couple of kids there. And there's such a broad range of abilities. There, some examples are I worked with one girl who's wheelchair bound. She can walk with assistance. We tried to get her up to do some physical stuff. Also, let's see, her brain level, as far as understanding or level of learning, is probably about a 3-year-old. She has, some things that a typical 3-year-old doesn't do yet, but as far as learning the alphabet, doing things like that, the way she interacts with people, I had a lot of fun with her though, because we would do some sign language and we would sing, and so it's kind of fun in a middle school level to work with kids more on a, you kind of bring it down to a lower level where they're, you play a lot. And playing is still learning.
I'm fighting with the dog. Don't think I'm doing anything really exceptionally strange. The dog has a purple rope, and I'm playing tug of war here, so please bear with the distraction. Really, I'm not doing anything exceptionally bizarre or anything. I'm just fighting with my dog. Never
Oh,
mind. Sorry.
so one big difference in that aspect, of course, is that we are, as paras, more physical because we are helping students walk. We're helping learn to get out of a wheelchair. We're helping them use the bathroom. We're helping changing diapers at times, tube feeding. So it takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more uh, adjustment. Like a lot of times, I'm a go with the flow kind of person, which kind of makes me fit in where I'm at pretty well because things never go exactly as you plan them.
I'm going to tell you this. I have a lot of respect for people that do what you do because I think, disabled people are so marginalized by society. And, they kind of act like they kind of ignore people with disabilities 99% of the time. And, it's nice to see people, that care for those people because there's so few people out there that do.
I think a lot of times society is afraid because, I mean, even when I meet somebody new, and it's whether it's somebody with a disability or without, I need to get a feel for what they're like. I need to kind of understand um, their interactions, like what their responses to things are, and then try to find an even ground. But I think society looking at someone with a disability or someone different, a couple things, they're afraid that they're going to offend. And so they back away. Or they just don't know how to interact. And the only reason, or not reason, but one of the only ways to know how to interact or to start interaction is to have had that experience. Me growing up, my aunt, who will be turning 70 in April, she has a developmental delay, brain damage, and she also has epilepsy. So growing up, I grew up with her knowing the kinds of things that she liked, didn't like, her routine. She's a very stubborn person. So just trying to learn to get on her good side kind of thing too. But it just comes easier when you have that experience.
Do you find that growing up with her kind of gave you a more like a better understanding of special needs people and more of a proclivity towards helping people with disabilities?
I didn't think about that before. Um, I still had some level of discomfort going into working with certain kids. Just once again, until you get to know them, um, then you're not afraid to do a tube feed and yet interact with them as kids and as people. So in a way, it probably helped me to understand and have a little bit of empathy, but yet I can't really just walk up to anybody and have a conversation.
That's
Um,
my area.
yeah,
So
I would I was raised in a very caring family, so I think that being a compassionate person is something I learned through my parents and through my family.
See, you just touched on something important. Not to cut you off there, Jim,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
No, I'm
I,
fine.
I just wanted to point this out. You touched on something important about empathy. I actually have a couple of friends with cerebral palsy, and in his in his case, he's all there mentally. He's a brilliant guy, very smart guy, one of my best friends, in fact. And he's told me horror stories about how people have treated him over the years. And it just seems to me that, like, not everyone, but it seems to me that a lot of times when society doesn't know how to approach a certain demographic, they're somewhat cold and apathetic towards them.
Okay, and that makes sense. Um, Fear and not understanding. I mean, yeah, we look at people um who, with cerebral palsy, oftentimes their body shapes are different, their muscle tones, all of that. And it's an oddity when you see it, especially if you've never seen it before, or if you've never talked to someone. And then to find out that their brains are just absolutely beautiful. And that happens with our kids. Uh, it's interesting in a way in the school that I'm in. A lot of times these kids and their classmates go out of their way to help. I'll see it in the gym where they're playing a game and they will help a kid get a ball and make sure they get a chance to throw a ball or do whatever they're doing. Um, what's interesting though is the kids who are maybe a higher level of physical activity don't always get that help, even though maybe sometimes they do need a little bit of assistance or something or to be included. But our school, we've started a unified program. So our high school has been doing it, and now our middle school started on that last year. So this is the second year we're still building unified, and it's unified sports usually. Um, Takes the typical students and pairs them up with our special ed students, and they participate in activities together. This year we've gone bowling. Last year it was a track and field day. Um, so our school is very much focused on inclusivity. Did I get that right? Inclusive. Make sure to make everybody feel like a part of a team, or just that you're not left out. And Kyle, you had mentioned before about the bullying aspect. And in our school, we have lessons on anti-bullying. So we very much focus on that in addition to being inclusive of not bullying, making sure kids know what bullying is, making sure there's a way to, um, a kid who's being bullied has a way to connect with an adult and let us know. There's a form on our school website that they can go to if they just want to fill it out that way. They can go right to any one of our principal, vice principal, or dean of students, that kind of thing. So the school I'm in, I think, is pretty awesome. It's also known for being really good with our special ed students. So we do get kids from a little bit of a distance sometimes. So I like where I'm at. I enjoy it. I don't know if that even I get off track, but that's
Oh, I think I think what you're saying needs to be said because there's a lot of places where they're not that inclusive, and there's a lot of places where bullying is rampant, like you wouldn't believe. Like the school that I come from, we had a few special ed students when I was going there. There was this kid named AJ that I remember. He had Down syndrome. He was awesome. Like always happy, always smiling. When you walk up to him, he'd give you a high five, even if he didn't know you. And I used to catch students making fun of him, you know. And but what I find is that people with disorders like that, it's like I don't see them as disabled. In a way, they're almost better than us because they're not tainted by the world. Like they're still pure. They're still innocent. They still have that that unfiltered, you know, that unfiltered purity, like you see in children. Like when they, believing in Santa Claus and
Yep. They have
believing
an
that the
excite-
world is a good place.
they have an excitement for life.
Yeah.
And they don't have, some of those other things that we deal with, that's not even in their radar. But I can't say that about all of the students that I work with because this year I'm working in the ASD program, so the autism spectrum disorder. And we have 4 boys, all sixth graders, all levels of autism on the spectrum. And one of the, I don't want to say symptoms, maybe what are the traits of autism, is these kids get depressed. And they're a lot of times very aware of how other people might look at them. And maybe in growing up too, uh, trying to, especially with parents, if they've never had a child with autism or been around a child with autism, then how do I raise this kid? How do I, treat them? What does it take? A lot of times our kids don't process stress very well. They haven't learned to cope with different disappointments or frustrations, and it takes them some time.
You would say that they're somewhat emotionally immature in a way, like
Um,
like they don't know how to deal with certain emotions.
yeah, they just don't know how to process it. It's not. I don't know. It's just one of those traits that they have. We
Maybe
do
emotional
one.
immaturity was a bad term, but
Um, no, it makes sense because as you mature and you understand how your emotions work and how to maybe get out of a depression or out of a funk or I'm just having a bad day, it takes more for these kids to snap out of it. And I have experienced depression. Thankfully, the medication I'm on, I can usually stay on a pretty even keel and not have to get too frustrated or too overwhelmed, except for Christmas cleaning. Then now I'm like, we have so much to do. But um, and maybe that aspect of me knowing what depression is like, I can kind of help them along. We have one student that has a lot of negative self-talk, and that's kind of common. And we just keep trying to, like say, no, we do care about you. And that's a big thing that I want my students always to know, that I don't do this job because I'm getting paid big dollars or anything. I do it because I care about these kids. And I just, you get to develop relationships with them. And I just love that. And then to see them grow and to learn and when they do have successes. But yet, in the program I'm in, there are days where everybody's having a meltdown. I mean, that's times 4 kids. One's ticked off because something's happening, another one is just tired and doesn't want to do things. So, and the schedule changes and different things like that. It is really interesting. And I'm one of those people who gets really bored with routine, like straight with nothing happening. So it kind of keeps me going to have the activity, even though, oh, I just looked at Jim with the rope. I didn't know what it was. Um, even
I
though
was,
typically autistic kids do need a routine, some can manage on slight changes in a routine where others need it to be very rigid. Anyway, I don't know what else to say there.
well, the thing is, and with Kris, she has been teaching kids now for several years. And it's interesting because I also remember, my parents were foster parents, and we had children come through our house that had, Mongolism. They
Syndrome these days.
Oh, okay, my bad. Anyway, had that, many different traumas, many different backgrounds, and, I saw so much when I was growing up, but it also taught me, yeah, well, I have a cousin that is severely autistic, and yeah, he's pretty much nonverbal because of it. But I have seen a lot of kids over the years. I've known a lot of kids over the years that have had all these, shall we say, challenges. But you know what? They're still kicking. They're still around to this day. They're still doing, absolutely everything they can to, keep themselves happy. And I'll tell you what, the innocence, I think that's probably the thing that I saw the most when I was growing up, where these kids had all these they had all these issues. But the thing is that way deep down inside, their hearts were pure gold. I mean, I'm thinking of, and I can say this to Kris because she knows. I'm thinking of Tim. I'm
Mhm.
thinking of Wanda. I mean, these two people that I'm talking about, I mean, they were the nicest, the most happy-go-lucky characters in the world. I mean, they would just roll with the punches and laugh about everything, and life was good. And in all reality, I think that's something that we who do not have those kind of issues, that's something that we should, learn about. We should, be more like that and less like, hyper analytical or whatever the case is. And so, yeah, I can say on behalf of my wife, or maybe not on, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say this. Yes, I am going to say that there are times when the lady of my life will come home after school and she will look at me, and I can only compare it to the glare of Medusa herself with the snakes coming out of her head, and she will look at me and she will go, I can't take this anymore. And she's just like, and it takes a little time for her to decompress after a hard day. I'm just very, very happy that I've had that opportunity to be here for her when she has those rough days. Otherwise, I'm afraid she'd probably shave the dog, stick her out in a snowbank. I would come home and there'd be a wall torn down, and it'd be like,
That's
no,
the dog.
She's
I
like,
don't.
like, how dare you
No,
say that?
shave the dog, stick her in a snowbank. I don't know, but we're not gonna find out because I'm gonna do my best to hang around
I
just
would.
long enough so you can what?
She looked so horrified when you said that.
I've
Well, I don't
over the
know.
years that like I was gonna say come home and there'd be holes in the walls, but I've also learned over the years that that really doesn't help.
Yeah, because then guess who has to fix it?
Oh man, I'm still laughing over that dog and the snowbank thing.
And I'm thinking about how freezing cold it is right there outside right now, and our poor puppy would be like, "What the heck, Dad?"
Mom had a bad day.
No, I would never take it out on a dog or a person.
No, but she has threatened to shave me in my sleep before.
You know, when I
Scary.
was in
Anyway,
school, and I'm not trying to say this in a way that would make me think I, look good or anything. It's not like that. But like when I was in school, I would tend to gravitate towards kids that were less popular, which means I was hanging out with the nerds, the geeks, and of course, occasionally I would meet kids with varying levels of disabilities. Like I remember this one kid that I was friends with. His name was Jacob, and he had Asperger's, and he was a little bit socially awkward. But like I've noticed that all my life, I've kind of gravitated towards people who are misunderstood and shunned by society because I guess coming up in school constantly being bullied, it kind of, as horrible as it was, I'm grateful for it because it taught me how to have empathy for other people.
mhm,
So in that way, I guess it was a good thing because, you know, even though I was going through hell in school, it gave me the wherewithal to make sure that other kids didn't have
yeah,
to make sure that they had a good friend that would listen to them and talk to them and not treat them like they're different. Because in my experience, I think that's why a lot of people with disabilities feel the way they do. It's because people treat them noticeably different than other people, and all they want is to be treated like everybody else.
yeah.
It's
And
very true.
and like I'll go ahead and shout them out. My brother in arms, one of my best friends. His name is Brett. He has cerebral palsy. I've heard horror stories of people treating him like he's not all there, even though he's very brilliant. I mean, you want to talk about intelligent? This guy's intelligent, and yet people still treat him like he isn't, just because of his physical limitations.
Right.
And I'm seeing a positive shift from most of society into not doing that as much, and it's good to see. It's really good to see that because you know people don't deserve to be depressed and sad and lonely just because they're a little bit different. I I can't stand that people have to go through life feeling like that over something that they didn't ask for.
Hmm.
Something that they've had since birth. You know, regardless of what it is. Anybody who's struggling with an invisible or visible ailment, they don't deserve to be treated like cattle. And
Right.
I get angry just thinking about it. I really do.
I really hope that um the trend of being more aware of other people continues and that people actually take the time to learn. Um, I would have to say I didn't know a lot about autism before, but I had a friend that has two sons that are autistic. Um, we've kind of not really stayed in touch real close, but I had helped her leave her abusive husband and take her kids with. And so, I got to listen to the different struggles she's had with her kids. Um, But I can't say that I totally understood it until I really started working with them. And it just takes education. And that comes in so many different places. And I'm going to plug this because as an educator, the one thing I hear so much from kids is, why do we have to learn this? I'm never going to use it. And I'm just like, we're teaching you how to learn. We're teaching you to be and hopefully continue to be curious. Look for information, read information. Don't grow up and be an adult who trusts what everybody says. Do your research.
Question everything.
Yes. I mean, it drives Jim crazy when my sisters and I fact
Oh
check
my
everything he
God.
says. Um,
Hey Google. Hey Google. I'm going to Google this. I'm
yes,
going to fact check you.
my
Yes.
sister has Siri on her phone, so
Oh, it drives me
hey,
nuts.
Siri. We try not to do that with everything, but we're kind of information seekers, which is really kind of funny because I kind of wonder at what point have I learned enough? You know,
Never, never,
I
never,
feel like
never.
I
No,
feel
it's fun learning things, isn't it? Like it's
like
it's
it.
fun. It's fun feeling like you could never know everything. Like me personally, I I I get exposed to a subject either indirectly or directly. If I find it interesting, I'll spend days watching documentaries about it. I'll talk to people about it. Knowledge to me is fun.
Yeah,
And
and it's power.
yeah, and I kind of want to say this about school too. I've always found it's funny you bring up the when are we going to use this thing, because I've always found that school, at least my school, the point of it always seemed to just teach you how to memorize facts.
Yeah,
Like I find that the best thing I gained from my years of going to school isn't the knowledge that I absorbed. It's the people I met. It's the experiences I had with my friends.
mhm,
It was learning how to be a good person, learning how to interact with other people, learning how to be empathetic and not apathetic,
yeah,
learning how to put myself in another person's shoes when I need to and try to try to understand other perspectives in life other than just my own.
yeah,
I think that's what I gained the most from school. And I I see kids nowadays, a lot of them are so entitled and so stuck up and all these things. And I just can't help but think, if you would have if you would have went through the type of schooling I did, you wouldn't act like that.
yeah. And a lot of it has changed since we went to school. Um, a lot of times, it still starts at home. When parents are giving kids excuses to um, not listen to a teacher, oh, that teacher doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, well, we're trying. Maybe we don't know everything. And one thing we learned as teachers, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I can find out. Um, I hated school. I was a good student. The social aspect of it, I really didn't like. And maybe part of it is the depression that I had that I didn't know was depression because I could keep it happy and light at school and then come home and just be frustrated.
And she was good at it, folks. And I mean, I'm for the folks out there that do not know, Kris and I actually went to my senior prom together. And so we have known each other for many, 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 many years, only been married for a few, but we've known each other for a very long time. And the whole time that she was in school, she was little Miss Happy, cheerleader, running around. And I mean, she's cute. Oh my God. But anyway, I mean, she was just adorable all the time. And I never had a clue that she was struggling and battling with depression and loneliness and elements of anxiety and social stressors. I had no
Well, and
clue.
I didn't know what those things were. I had these feelings, but I didn't know what, I couldn't put a name on them. You had said something and now I forgot what it was.
um
Loneliness. I had a few friends. Um,
yeah.
and being a cheerleader, typically they say, "Oh, cheerleaders are so popular." And in my mind, growing up in a very small town, um, popular was kind of overrated. The popular kids were the drinkers. The popular kids were the ones whose parents let them kind of do stuff, do whatever they wanted. And my parents kept a pretty good um handle on me, but I was also a firstborn, so it was my job to pave the way and to do it right. But I was lonely. I wanted to have some really very close friends, and I had friends I did things with, and I had um it seemed to change over the years. Like I had one really good friend, uh 3 years younger than me. Later to find out that she was gay, but she never told me, which, hurt to a point. And I know we're off topic, but it's still kids who get bullied and kids that get picked on and kids that are different. Um, I left school, I graduated, and later on, when I reconnected with her, she said her life in school was just hell because people found out and people were picking on her. I I feel like if she had said, Kris, I'm gay, I wouldn't have understood because once again, small town, I didn't know anybody who was gay. I really didn't know what that meant, you know. So, um man, that just it hit me in the gut when I found out. But I wouldn't have known what to do. I wouldn't have known how to react because I hadn't had that experience and that understanding yet.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say this. You getting off topic was okay there because what you were saying it kind of interconnects with other topics we've discussed. Like mental health, people with mental issues, people with physical issues, people with emotional issues. Like it's in a lot of ways they're treated the same by society, by other kids and their peers. And you know, I remember in school, kids were so vicious. Almost nothing was off limits to them. And having to go through it myself was bad enough, but knowing that there's kids out there who are still trying to figure out who they are and they're getting relentlessly bullied, you know, it's sad because that in and of itself can cause mental health issues, depression, anxiety, all of that. Like those kids are feeding the cycle. They're perpetuating those type of problems by being little assholes.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe things are getting better. I don't know. I don't know anyone really who has kids that are in high school, in the same high school that I used to go to. But I hope things get better for those types of kids, because that's no way to go through life.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves a friend. Everybody deserves a shot at a happy life. And the fact that, disabled people and mentally ill people, and people who are gay, people who are, trans, the fact that, no matter what you are, the fact that there's people out there that feel like you don't deserve that because of what you are, that breaks my heart. It really does.
Yeah. And I wasn't raised in a family that understood that aspect, as far as being transgender or gay, lesbian, whatever. I think that my parents are still kind of closed off on that, but there's other things that we've had to do in life that my parents then have gone, oh, well, okay, I can accept this. I mean, I was raised in a church that was unlike any church that you would know. And my parents were very focused on that I marry someone from the church. And I did not, because first of all, the majority of the people that lived around me that went to this church were relatives, and we don't marry our relatives. So, I went off and I got married to somebody from a completely different background and whatnot. And mom and dad just had to accept it. They love me. So, they want me to be happy. And I want, I don't know what I was going to say. Happy. I mean, we just all want to be happy, like you were saying. And in schools, I do feel like kids are learning acceptance a lot more. We still have a ways to go. Yeah, it really takes a little bit from the parents too. If the parents are accepting of others, then the kids are going to be much more accepting of others. If the parents are more closed off, closed-minded, it's going to take a bit for these kids to maybe change their parents' minds and say, you know what, I have this friend who is gay, or I have this friend who is disabled or has depression, and they're really fun, they're really cool, I like them. And then the parent can then maybe change their mind through their own children.
Hey Jim, I got a
What?
question.
I've got an answer.
Since your experience is probably quite different from hers in some ways, so I'm curious, when it comes to the way disabled people or people who are different in general are treated, how have things changed since you were going through schools and since you were a kid? Like how do you find, like, maybe in your work, in your work environment, or just out and about, how do you find that things are changing and for the good?
Well, I have to let you know, I think I may have shared this with you before, but for me, people with physical handicaps, especially while I was growing up, uh, it didn't matter. And the reason that it didn't matter is because my dad only has one arm. So, being that my dad's only got one arm, sure, we'd walk around and people would look at him kind of funny and stuff along that line. But it was really interesting because I didn't even think of that. It was not a focus for me in any way, shape, or form that my dad only had one arm. I'll tell you what, you want to see somebody interesting, you ought to see what that boy can do with a chainsaw. One-handed and a chainsaw. Are you kidding me? And he used to do it all the time. He's 87 now. He's not doing it anymore, but I remember when he used to. And so what that basically taught me as I was growing up is that you are only handicapped if you allow yourself to be. He did not look at his, missing an arm as a handicap. he basically took that and changed it into what is known as a challenge. And so he's like, hey, you know what? Okay, I've only got one arm. Does that make me less of a person? Heck no. And he would, and he challenged himself. And by doing that, he also challenged many, many other people to, to, and, had the accident about a year and a half ago now, and I lost 85% of my hearing. Am I handicapped? No. Handicapped is if you are handicapped, that is a choice that you have allowed yourself to make. You can look at it as a challenge, but don't look at it as a crutch.
Well, that kind of reminds me of something. You guys ever notice that when we were kids, disabilities were invisible to us? Like it didn't matter if a kid was in a wheelchair, none of that mattered to us. We didn't see that. We didn't see a disability, you know, just like you didn't see a person with one arm. When we were kids, none of that mattered because all that mattered was living in the moment and
Exactly.
enjoying the people around us. And honestly, I think our biggest problem is that a lot of people I think are jealous of them because they still know how to enjoy their lives. They still know how to enjoy life. And we allow ourselves to be weighed down by prejudice and emotion and judgment and all these things that comes with being an adult in a society like ours. We lose track of what's really important in life. We lose track of what's really beautiful in the world. And one thing I've always envied about some of the people I've had the privilege of meeting that you would consider disabled, one thing I've always envied about them is that they never forgot that life is beautiful. They still see the beauty in the world. They're not weighed down by the same things that we are. It's like their mind is allowed to go uninhibited by stress and bills and what their friends think of them and what their peers think of them. And it's that's why I don't see them as disabled. I see them as different, but not in a bad way.
Right.
And I think I think our biggest problem as a society is that we've forgotten what really matters in life, and we've become so judgmental and so critical of everything that when you see somebody that's different, your first, not anyone here obviously, but your first inclination, the average person's first inclination is to judge that person. Oh, I bet they're like this because of this. I bet, oh, this guy's in a wheelchair. I bet he's not mentally all there. I bet he's mentally retarded. I bet he's this, that, the other thing. And I've seen it. I've seen those gears turning in people's heads. You can tell when it's happening. And it's not because there's anything wrong with those people. It's because the people doing it have lost perspective with what's really important in life. I really believe that.
I have a couple comments I want to make.
Uh-oh.
One of the key terms or wordings nowadays is not so much disabled, but differently abled. And Jim, I would say that describes your dad to a T, because he took what he could do even without an arm and did those things. Maybe in a different way, differently abled. All of us have abilities. I suck at math.
She does.
Geometry to me is like, I don't get it. If I were to build a doghouse, I would build the four walls and then try to put it together. Forget trying to make the frame. Maybe I've kind of learned a little bit as the years go on, but When it comes to math, I hate it. It's hard for me. That is not my strong suit. I have other abilities. Um, Something I say to my kids when they can't, I said, you are capable. You are capable. Many people are capable of many things. And it's not going to be what everybody's good at. Everybody has their own talents, regardless of what their bodies do or don't do. I'm trying to think what else you were saying, because it was something else I wanted to add in there, but it's okay.
Well, I want to point out that I might have said some terms that were socially unacceptable, but the only reason I said it that way, like I was making a point, like
Yeah.
that's the way people think, like the verbiage that a lot of people use. I was making that point, so I don't want to seem like I'm being, socially unacceptable in some of the ways that I'm saying things.
Yeah, and I would say you're not being disrespectful. I mean, for us growing up, mental retardation, they're mentally retarded. That's the way that I would describe my aunt. Because, I mean, in the usage of the word retarded, it does explain the ability or lack of ability of how the brain works. But because other people have taken it and made it something more of a way to mock people, a way to pick on them, it has become a word that we
So,
don't use.
yeah, society turned it into a derogatory term.
Yeah. And that happens with a lot of different things, which is
Like,
frustrating.
like the word gay is a good example of that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nowadays people throw that around as an insult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all I do is I just sit back and I just, I have to smile a little bit, you know, to myself, thinking about how society has changed since I was a child, since Kris was just little. You know, back in the day, it was like, oh, well, we've got to be judgmental of somebody. Okay. So that means we have to be judgmental of somebody because of their skin. Well, we have to be judgmental of somebody because they have, they go to a different church than us. They're a different nationality. And it was always like that when I was growing up. I still see some of that every once in a while, especially when you go back to the old digs, also known as, the home territory that you came from. But just watching how things are moving forward. So now it's not so much, oh, he's black, oh, he's white, oh, he's green. It isn't all about that as much as it used to be. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of the different political things that have happened downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm not going to get into all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
but don't bring them
But
up.
no, no. Oh, but you notice I'm not being specific.
Yeah.
That's right. So, but I'm not going to go into all that stuff. But I am seeing that as time has gone on, people are slowly becoming more open-minded, perhaps. So it isn't, the stigma isn't as bad as it used to be. Back in the day, it was terrible. I mean, if you had a person of color walk down the main street of my hometown, you better believe that would be the hot topic of conversation for about a week to come. I mean, it was just absolutely unheard of. But now the thing is that, and I have to admit that I've had to speak to my own parents about some of this mentality and how to shift out of the mode that they have been in for so many years. And so they're like, oh well, this person is of this faith, and they have different hairstyles, and they have all this other stuff. It's like, now wait, just stop. Just because it is something that you're not familiar with, that does not mean that your way is the only way. And so that is an example. The different religious beliefs. Well, they're gonna go to hell if they go to that church. And it's like, you know what? Why are you standing in judgment of them? It's not your job to judge. That's between them and their creator. Period. Drop it, leave it alone.
I find that what you're touching on in large is because societal priorities have shifted over the years.
Yes.
And so now things that were important in those days, nobody cares about it anymore. It's all the society's priorities are so much different now, and one could argue that some of society's priorities are also predatory in other ways, but that could be a whole conversation in of itself right there.
You
but
bet.
but I have been seeing a shift in the right direction towards people with disabilities, people to a certain extent, people with some mental illness like depression and things of that nature. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done though, because there's still a stigma around disabled people. There's still a stigma around mentally ill people. There's still a stigma around those who are gay, trans, whatever. And I'm all about shattering those stigmas and learning how society can allow people to be themselves without being so derogatory and predatory with their opinions.
I agree. You
Yep.
bet.
Jump in here quick.
Of course.
As far as like the closed-minded of people, different from ourselves. When we grew up, our worlds were small because we did not communicate with people in Louisiana, for example, unless they were family that we knew. We didn't have ways to see what France looks like other than in a book. We didn't have ways to communicate with people outside of our community freely. Facebook, I can have Facebook friends that live all over the place and they share their world with me. So my world is so much bigger. So I think because our worlds were so small growing up, anything that came in that was different, it was something we didn't have experience with. It was something or someone we had never met. So as our worlds get bigger, I mean, in a way, we have more differences that we're seeing, more things that we have to learn to accept, but we can also see what our similarities are. So, and maybe we've made progress when we're looking at people with different skin colors, that kind of thing. Disabilities or mental health, I don't know, like thinking about it, are we on the same level or are we at the same level as like me growing up and having a friend of color, or me growing up and having a friend with a disability? Maybe I guess I'm kind of twisting this a little bit, not quite right in my mind, because I was thinking I grew up with people with disabilities, but I didn't grow up with people of different colors. So I would have been more accepting or learned to be more accepting of people with disabilities or with other things. Maybe not the mental health aspect because I really didn't know about it till I became an adult. So, I mean, do you kind of get where I'm going?
I actually think I know what you're getting at. What you're getting at, I think, is that it depends on what people are exposed to. If people aren't exposed to certain disabilities, when they're confronted by it all of a sudden, a lot of people have that knee jerk oh reaction. Is that what you
You
were
bet.
trying to say?
I think that's where I was going with that. But I mean, and like I said, our worlds were so small. And
yeah,
now we can see and talk to people that are different.
that's kind of what I was getting at about, how disabilities were invisible to us as kids because our worldview was so small compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
We didn't look at the world the way we do now as adults. We just saw another kid that we could play with.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. The innocence. But folks, I got to let you know, I know it's hard to believe, but we've already burned 1 hour.
Oh boy.
We have already done 1 hour. And, just I'll be quiet here for a moment. I'll of course show us all out the door after a little bit. But if each of you would like to wrap things up just a little bit, just kind of reach a conclusion to today's little webcast, I would appreciate it. So I'm just going to step back and let you two wrap it up, and I'll seal the deal.
Well, I would like to wrap up
Go ahead.
personally my part of it by saying I think that society really needs to teach their kids how to be less judgmental, especially towards people with disabilities, because you know, creating adults who are bigoted or limited in their thinking does the world no favors. If we want to have a world where everyone feels accepted, we have to get rid of those judgments. We have to stop acting cold towards people that are different, and we need to teach our kids to do the same.
I'm going to say that first of all, I love people. And everybody that I am around knows my heart. They can see through my actions why I do what I do. I love to make a difference in the lives of my students. Shoot, my mind. As far as educating, it is important that society, people learn. People don't lump one disability. Okay. Something that I've learned this year, I'm working with children with autism. You meet one child or one person with autism, you've met one child with autism because they are not alike. Everybody has their own abilities. And it's the same with all of us. We all have differences, which make us awesome, but we have some people that we're going to have commonality with. Don't look at one person with autism and think they're all like that. Don't look at one person in a wheelchair and, like you said, Kyle, don't assume because they look different that their brains are different. That's one person. Get to know people, individuals. It's so important to know the person for who they are and what they are inside.
Stop being superficial and shallow, people.
It's okay to care. It's okay to love. It's okay to embrace people. Why do you want to make one person's life miserable? What do you get from that? I don't think you get good feelings. Love people, care about people, because that not only makes you feel good, but it makes someone else feel good.
And folks,
To live by.
there you go. And just like that, we have ran out of time for Crimson Tide of this week. But remember, folks, no matter what a person looks like, no matter what they smell like, no matter whatever, do not embrace the person. Embrace their heart and embrace their spirit. That is the only thing that truly matters when it comes to a human being. Embrace their heart and embrace their spirit. I guarantee you, you will win every time if you play it just like that. We're wrapping it up. New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, so on and so forth. Y'all take care. And we'll be talking to you probably right before New Year's, right here on Crimson Tide. Once again, I am Jim. This is Kyle and my loving wife, Kris. You
AKA
folks
Justin.
take care. Yeah, the ginger. Just remember the ginger. Everybody take care. Thank you very much for joining us once again. And we'll see you next time right here on Crimson Tide. We out.